We've got our grid forming in the collecting area, and the next race out is for the Mad Jack for pre-war sports cars.
Would you like me to tell who Mad Jack was?
Alistair, you read my mind. I was just about to ask what the Mad Jack is actually about.
Well, it's a traditional race here at the Donington Historic Festival, the Mad Jack race, and it's named after Mad Jack Shuttleworth, although his real name was Richard Shuttleworth, born in 1909. The family lived in Old Warden Manor near Biggleswade in Bedfordshire, and their wealth came from the agricultural engineering company called Clayton and Shuttleworth, which also made steam engines as well. So there was some money about, and that allowed him to go racing, which was his passion. And the reason that the Donington Historic Festival runs the Mad Jack race is that he was the winner of the 1935 Donington GP in an Alfa Romeo Tipo P3. 1935 was before the later years, 37 and 38, when the Mercedes and Auto Unions were here, but nevertheless a very competitive race here at Donington Park, which of course was a beautiful parkland circuit lined with trees. The Melbourne Loop, as we call it now, that's behind the commentary box, actually went all the way down to the bottom of the hill near the main gate and then back up over that rise, and the cars used to take off there.
I've been told you had a little trip down there last
year. Yeah, we did a little trip. My son Duncan, who's helping us with the admin for supporting us, took a picture of me at the spot and then he's mashed it together. I don't know how these youngsters do it with technology, but there we were. And anyway, before that, fabulous pictures were taken at that spot with the Mercedes. That was the Grand Prix car. Mad Jack Shuttleworth won the 1935 race in his Alfa. Sadly, like many young men of the time, he joined up the RAF, of course, doing his duty, and joined in 1939, but was killed on a training exercise near RAF Benson in 1939. 1940, I think. Sorry, 1940 it was. And anyway, his name lives on in the Mad Jack race here at Donington, and also in the Shuttleworth collection, which is at the Old Warden Aerodrome near Biggleswade. So there's a real strong connection with Donington and with this meeting in particular. Another connection with this particular race is car number 46, which is being driven, as always, by Duncan Wiltshire, who is one of the driving forces behind the whole meeting, and indeed historic promotions and motor racing legends. And Duncan racing his usual Bentley 3 litre. So we've got a couple of connections really with this race.
I love the fact that we're still honouring Mad Jack all these years later, and really it's down to people like that back in those days where we, the very forefront of motorsport, not just in this country but worldwide. 1935 racing at Donington Park, and here we are, 2021, still doing that.
And you can. We've got the grid now up on the screen, so let's give you the grid from qualifying this morning. And pole position to 112 Justin Mayers and Ben Mayers in the GN. Alongside is Tom Waterfield and Eddie Williams, number 7. And on the second row, it's number 11, Fred Wakeman and Patrick Blakeney-Edwards, alongside number 20, Gareth Burnett. On the third row, we've got Sue Derbyshire and Ewan Cameron in the Morgan, car number 35, and number 5, Richard Pilkington. And then we've got on the next row, Rudiger Friedrichs, number 8, and Steve Skipworth and James Dean, number 75. Moving back to the fifth row, we have Richard Hudson and Stuart Morley, number 9, and Andrew Hall and Theo Hunt, number 69. And then behind them is Ewan Getley and Robin Tallui in car number 99, and 21, Alan Middleton, completes the 6th row. Back to the 7th row, we've got Richard Iliff, number 29, and 85, James Morley and Clive Morley, the Morley family, in the Bentley, number 85. And behind them it's Robert Blakemore, number 15, and number 4, Edward Bradley and Richard Bradley again. Then we've got, back to the next row, Chris and Nick Ball in car number 51, and 46, Duncan Wiltshire, I've mentioned. Jock McKinnon on row 10, number 17, and number 12, Nigel Dowding, completes row 10. Row 11 is Gregor Fiskin and Christoph Cowens, number 16, and number 2, Mark Butterworth. Behind them is 77, Richard Lake, and 84, William and George Elborn. And then next row we've got an old friend, Paul Poshiol, who's out again in this race, number 144, alongside number 6, Steve and Josh Ward. And completing the grid, we've got 14, Guy Northam, and 3, Simon Edwards. So that's 28 cars, and the oldest car in the race is 100 years old, so happy
That's quite
birthday.
incredible, isn't it?
And it's on pole position.
That is incredible, a 100-year-old.
Yeah. Justin Mayers and Ben Mayers in the GN Parker, which was from 1921, although it wasn't originally fitted with this engine. This was fitted sometime later, so 1929 Gypsy Moth aircraft engine in the front of this GN Parker. And when you get a shot of it when they come round to the grid, you'll see it's the GN stands for Godfrey and Fraser Nash. And it's just about enough of a frame to hold the wheels, the engine and the gearbox, and just about the driver in place, with a 6.2 litre engine up front. We're looking there at car number 77, Richard Lake, in the Aston Martin Speed model. Beautiful car. Now we're looking at the grid head on, and you can see on the left hand side of the track there is the pole position car started by Justin Mayers, handing over to Ben. 112 is the number, and then Tom Waterfield will start in the Fraser Nash alongside on the front row. And then on the second row you can just see poking between them there a staggered grid, so not a rolling start for this race. It'll be a standing start started by the red lights. On the second row is Fred Wakeman and Patrick Blakeney Edwards. Now normally Fred will start, we haven't had that confirmed to us, but normally Fred, the owner of the car, and looking at the helmet, it is Fred. Yes, it is the black and white helmet of Fred Wakeman will start that, the American domiciled in the UK. And alongside will be Gareth Burnett in the green Talbot, and he's driving solo as the hard-working marshals there, the Orange Army, just helping the drivers to get to their correct positions, all moving into place. And there's the back view of that Aston Martin Speed model we saw earlier on.
I can tell you that Richard Bradley won't be sharing the car with his father. He's going to leave the driving duties to his dad, who he's sharing that number 4 Aston Martin Ulster with in the programme. But Richard and his dad, his father's called Edward. Edward's going to take on the duties for the whole of this 40-minute race. We've got the grid formed up, and what a great sight that is. This is where automobile racing, our passion of motor racing, all started, ladies and gentlemen. You heard Alistair mention we've got the car at the front of the field, 100 years old, as that beautiful sight of these pre-war race cars. These were the Formula One cars, the Grand Prix cars of the day, of the age, and it was quite a time when, if you think about it, we're just transitioning from horses and carts. Not too long before we saw these cars out on our roads and getting involved in not just circuit racing, but at the time road racing was the thing out on the public roads being used for competition purposes. Through the Craner curves, then off-field go. And we've got a huge grid of 28 of these pre-war sports cars.
And it's certainly true that the factory might build a car for a race, but you could go and buy one yourself and go racing. It was very much an open sport then, as we see the cars making their way through McLean's. What a lovely camera shot that is, very low down. You can see the drivers working away, leaning over, and there's Duncan Wiltshire going through the picture in the Bentley 3 litre. And they're making their way up to the highest point of the circuit. I suspect the leaders will now be coming down the straight as we see Guy Northam in his Bentley going through McLean's. And here comes the leader into the right-left chicane. And look out for the car in second place, Gareth Burnett, the green Talbot, because Gareth had a troubled practice, very, very experienced in this Talbot. And we might see him challenging Justin Mayers for the lead. There he is there with in third place is Rudy Friedrichs. He's quick as well. Now he wasn't as far up the grid as we expected either, so I wonder whether he had a little problem and we normally see Rudy right up there. And in 4th place, it's Tom Waterfield in the car that was on the front row. And now they come down through the Craner curves again towards the old hairpin. Great sight.
Beautiful sight. Justin Mayers, I think, is going to have his hands full to hold back Burnett in that Talbot Brooklands. And indeed, the Talbot Brooklands looking like it's about to challenge as they come out of the old hairpin up towards McLean's. Now they just come into view through that sweeping left-hander of Schwann's curve and up towards the tricky uphill turn-in for McLean's. And it looks like Burnett is actually tripping over the smaller statured GN Parker model of Justin Mayers into view over the brow at Coppice. I think this is the spot, Alistair, where we're going to see a change of lead. I'm not sure that the smaller engine Parker can keep that Talbot behind. He is, though. The lighter car seems to be, and if indeed, that looks like Rudy Friedrichs, who's come through into second. But how's he going to make it stick? The car squirming all over on the bricks on those skinny tyres, and he just hangs onto it. And the number 8, the Avis Freely, Firefly I should say, of Friedrichs goes through into second and charging down onto the leader, if anything.
And Fred Wakeman's caught up with this lead battle as well in the Fraser Nash. So we've got a 5-car battle for the lead, and into the lead goes. No, almost into the lead. I was going to say Rudy Friedrichs, but he didn't quite make it. Swinging round the outside, the 6.2 litre aero-engined GN Parker of Justin Mayers goes back into the lead again. But it's such a skinny little tyres, skinny little car as they come down. Now it's Rudy Friedrichs who's really putting the pressure on as they come down into the old hairpin once again. The great big steering wheel on these cars. And then it's Gareth Burnett in 3rd place. As we look at a battle further down the field, it looks like a Lagonda at the front there. Yes, it's number 51 we're looking at, and it's in fact the Invicta of Chris Ball and Nick Ball that we were looking at then, the number 51 car. But now we're back with the leaders again.
There's been a change. Friedrichs has gone into the lead, that number 8, and he's gone ahead of Justin Mayers in the GN Parker into view. It looks like the number 112 GN Parker of Justin Mayers is struggling to hang on. What I love about these pre-war cars, you can see how much work the drivers are doing. They're very animated in the cars. Remember, they're not strapped in. There's no full 4-point, 5-point harness on these cars, and the drivers are actually moving their body weight around, and it's a very physical job. Just look at them working away and then reaching down for the gear lever to change gear. And if anybody is, I'm not sure there's anybody as animated as Rudy Friedrichs. There you can see on the brakes, steering wheel going left to right, just finding the grip, stopping the car from sliding. There's the number 11 through on the 7, or is it? Side by side has gone the Wakeman and Blakely Edwards against the Waterfield and Williams car. I'm not sure. Did you say it was Wakeman at the wheel of the number 11?
Fred started that, as he usually does, the owner of the car, and it's Tom Waterfield in the other car that just went round the outside. As we look back at Rudy Friedrichs again, still, he never has the wheel still, does he? No. He's always moving it. And there goes Tom Waterfield in that distinctive red and black helmet, chasing after Gareth Burnett in the Talbot as they come up to the top of the hill at McLean's, and then they go higher still up towards Coppice. So it's all uphill at the moment for these cars, and they're really fighting it out now. They each have a strength in a different part of the circuit. They do, and it really, what I usually use the term of, they complete the lap at pretty much similar lap times, but in very, very different ways. As into the pits has come a car, can't quite see who that is, but problems there. Not unexpected, really. These cars are very, very old, very well prepared though, with love and care, brought back to life. I mean, pretty much the whole of this 28 car field wouldn't be out of place static in a museum, but it's quite applaudable really to see that the owners are not afraid to bring the cars out and race them in the way that they were intended. The reasons why they were built was to be used and raced, and Rudy Friedrichs is certainly doing that in that number 8 as he continues to lead by a very small margin, working away at the wheel there, just getting the car to slide.
which is the way to drive these cars and optimise the lap time. As some of the field into the chicane down the order. Just see.
Duncan Wiltshire we're looking at there in the number 46 Bentley. Now, would you believe once, many years ago, that was used as a plough on a farm, and Duncan and his family lovingly restored that car, but years ago it was just a machine, and it was used as a plough after being used on the road. But doesn't it look lovely now? 3 litre Bentley of Duncan Wiltshire, number 46. He's running in 19th place, just lost a place actually to that Invicta. We saw that change on screen further back round the circuit, and the number 29 car of Richard Iliff, that's the Riley Kestrel Sports, very low car, as he comes up to McLean's.
You know, you're looking at these cars when you get the opportunity, if you can, when we get to be able to visit historic festivals like these, and you have a look at these cars and you see that it was the very outset of automobile design, their very basic design, sort of 2 chassis legs going down the middle of the car, very similar to how horse-drawn carriages were built, and then obviously we got rid of the horses and plonked an engine in there, but very little thought, you would think, to aerodynamics, with mudguards covering the wheels, catching the air, acting like big sort of air scoops, if anything, and causing a lot of drag. There was very little thought put in. It was all about sort of the operational side of making that carriage move. So you plonked a big engine in there, you connected the engine to the drive wheels, and off you went. And then you had the additional thought process of being made to radiators and the like, and obviously the radiators were plonked right up at the front of on the front of the chassis, right in the airstream, to catch as much of that cooling air as possible. So very practical designs. But when you look closely, Alistair, there are thoughts. There was some thought given to airflow and how you manage that air over these cars. But you've got to look perhaps even more closely than you have to a modern car.
Certainly, yes. There's certainly not a lot of thought given to aerodynamics as such, but I suppose there was some thought given to the driver's comfort and making sure that they weren't being buffeted. So we've got the little sight screens there on the front of that car, the Rudi Friedrichs car, just to deflect the air away from the driver. But we've got a great battle going on still, and it's Rudi Friedrichs leading the Wild GN with the 6.2 litre aero engine, and the whole thing virtually is made of wood, and very little thought, talking about thought of the driver and comfort, very little thought in that car. It was just a case of how little can we put on the chassis just to hang the wheels and the engine and gearbox off it, and it not to fall to bits. And 100 years old Rudi Friedrichs car, the leader, car number 8, the Alvis Firefly from 1933, so that's not a spring chicken either.
Not far off of that being 100 years old.
And then similar age, 1933, for the Talbot AV105 of Gareth Burnett, number 20, which is mixing it at the front. And just a quick thought about the entrance in this race and the connections to Le Mans, one of the most famous and well-known sports car races in the world, still running. A little bit late this year with COVID, but it will run. We have a Lagonda in the race, which won the Le Mans race outright.
There's a change for first place. They certainly cut in, but that was a change for the lead, and a little acknowledging wave there down the inside. I think he knew Friedrichs kind of accommodated that, didn't he? Justin Mayers there going down the inside. They're almost having a conversation as he came by.
Yes, Rudi Friedrichs taken the lead again from Justin Mayers, but Rudi sort of thanked him, didn't he, as he went by, and Justin thanked him.
I'm coming through, thank you very much. Oh, off you go.
And Gareth Burnett probably pick up the phone and just ring one of them and tell them I'm coming through soon as well, because there's a lot of back markers here, just passing one of the Aston Martins coming down through the Craner curves. And we said it yesterday, but it's even more true when you're racing cars that are nearly 100 years old. There's an awful lot of respect between these drivers, and they give each other racing room, which is lovely to see, but it's no less fierce, the competition.
No. And you could see that, Alistair, the way the cars are sliding around and the way that they're being driven, and I suppose the reasons why you have to accommodate your competitors because these cars are moving around on the track so much. They're not on the brakes, they're moving from left to right and are being fully controlled by the likes of Rudy Friedrichs, who's very, very animated in the cockpit of that car. Out onto the back straight, we're under 30 minutes, so we've had 10 minutes, and this is a pit stop race. We haven't mentioned that, but perhaps we need to mention when the pit stop window opens.
In about 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
Right, so the pit stop opens in a few minutes. That means that we've got a compulsory mandatory pit stop of 30 seconds stationary, and you're allowed 15.3 seconds to get into the pits and then out of the pits. So between in and out, you've got to have taken 45.3 seconds. However, there are officials down there timing pit stops where you have to be stationary for 30 seconds. Some of the drivers have chosen to complete the 40-minute race all alone and won't be sharing their cars, but there will be driver changes, and I think we've got Andrew Marriott down there who's going to try and maybe speak to one or two. It's a very noisy pit lane here at the Donington Historic Festival, so we'll try our best to get a chat to one or two of our drivers and get a bit of insight as to how their race has gone. Hopefully we'll be able to do that.
We're looking at one of the Bentleys coming out of McLean's up towards Coppice. No, it's coming down the long straight towards the chicane, isn't it? It's already gone through Coppice. And that's the number 9 car of Richard Hudson and Stuart Morley, the Bentley 3.4.5, which means that it was a 3-litre chassis originally, but somebody's decided let's put a 4.5-litre engine in it, which racers are prone to do. And another gesticulation there, that was from the driver of the car number 9, which is Richard Hudson, started that car. And here we've got the Morgan 3-wheeler. This is the shared car of Ewan Cameron and Sue Derbyshire. Now Ewan Cameron has started and Sue will take over, and despite it only having 3 wheels, as you can obviously see there on the screen, it is incredibly stable, and it set 5th quickest time in qualifying, started on the 3rd row of the grid. An amazing effort from Sue and Ewan, who are both very experienced in driving 3-wheeler Morgans, built still in Malvern, although it started slightly further, just outside of Malvern, but has been based on its same site in Pickersleigh Road in Malvern for a very, very long time, and still, of course, manufacturing cars. I think it's true to say that of British, although it's not British owned anymore, it's Italian now. I always used to say Morgan is the largest car producer in UK car producer, because once the big names were bought out by foreign companies, Morgan remained in British ownership, although recently has been taken over, but still there in the same site. And we're looking at Justin Mayers again now. He will be handing over to Ben for the second part of the race, but they're still locked together, aren't they, John?
They really are. I mean, I think for the last few laps, every time they've crossed the line, there've been less than a second gap between these two competitors, and they've really been racing very, very intensely. They can't afford to make any mistake because they've been together. And once again, we're looking. Oh, I thought that was from that perspective, it looked like we were being challenged. Now hand goes in the air from the number 8. Rudy Fredericks, I think, has indicated that he wants to come into the pits. Now this, I suspect, will be, as we've just ticked by the pit window opening, Rudy Fredericks will come into the pits, and he's not going to swap over. It's a little wave there, very friendly. The pit window is definitely open. I think that opened at 25 past, 25 minutes to remaining, I should say.
Yeah, that's correct.
So Friedrichs won't get out of the car, but he has to remain static on the pit lane for 30 seconds. So he's allowed 7.5 seconds to get into the pits. And that was a very good thing.
I'm sure it's right.
Yeah.
Gareth Burnett there as well in the pits. He was in that lead battle, but look where the number 8 Rudy Friedrichs Alvis Firefly has come out. It's right in the middle of a mid-pack. He'll make short work, I'm sure, of... he doesn't like going straight, does he? Look at
He
that steering wheel.
No, and you know when you see the old movies in the in-car of two actors and they're sawing at the wheel and you think, what are they doing? Across the grass, Rudy Friedrichs gets very, very crossed up. You know what? That to me indicates he understands the urgency of not being slowed down by these back markers. He, in so doing, on the left-hand apex of the Craner curves, he went over the grass on the inside, right across the grass, and he came back onto the track on a full broadside. He knows what he's got to do, and he's got to make ground now so that when the cars ahead of him are in their pit stops, he wants to get by and he wants to put some space between them. The number 20's in also, and that's the car that was currently in third or fourth place.
Gareth got his helmet off. Look, he's in trouble.
That's
what a
not
shame.
good sign. Yeah.
So we saw him come in behind the Rudy Friedrichs car, thinking it would be the normal stop, but in fact he's still there, so that's a shame for Gareth Burnett. In comes Fred Wakeman now. He'll hand over to Patrick Blakeney-Edwards, the preparer of Fred's fleet of cars. I think we've seen them out in every race today almost, apart from the open wheel races, and PBE, as he's known, will take over, and he is just as quick, if not a little bit quicker than Fred, although Fred is now really honed his driving and he's very quick indeed, the American who lives in the UK. There's PBE on his helmet, so he's taken over the number 11, which is the Fraser Nash TT Replica Super Sport, owned by Fred Wakeman, now taken over by Patrick Blakeney-Edwards, goes back out on track. So we're going to have a few minutes of confusion in terms of the timing screen.
Yes.
But Justin Mayers and Ben Mayers, Justin driving at the moment, still leading. They haven't yet come into the pits. Plenty of time to do so. And they'll have agreed beforehand how they want to split the race between them.
Yeah, there's the tactical approach, isn't it? If you've got one driver who's quicker than the other, then tactically it's probably best to give the faster driver more time at the wheel because you'll make more ground. If there's nothing between drivers, then it doesn't matter. But then there's also the gentlemanly approach of let's share the driving and let's have an enjoyable afternoon of racing these cars. And usually we see the race split right down the middle. Well, right now, Alistair, we are at that point of splitting the race right down the middle because we are approaching the 20-minute mark of this 40-minute race. So I think we're going to see, we're already seeing a lot of cars making their way to the pits for their compulsory mandatory stops. And I think we're going to see that continue for the next couple of laps at least.
We're following here the number 69 car, which is actually running in 6th place. And now we've cut away to one of the Aston Martins. And there is PBE in car number 11, hand up there, thanking the other driver for keeping over to the right. Number 15 in the pits is Robert Blakemore in the Aston Martin Speed model. And
there's the what I was meaning by consideration being given to aerodynamics. All right, we're not talking about downforce, we're talking about the air moving across the car, and the rear end of that number 15 Aston Martin shows that there was consideration made, the way that the shape of the car, getting the air to leave the car as smoothly as possible and reducing drag. Even back then, almost 100 years ago, there was an understanding of airflow and aerodynamics of sorts.
Into the pits comes number 84, which is the Elborn's car, William Elborn Sr. and George Elborn in the Bentley 3.4.5. So this is another one that was built by Bentley on a 3-litre chassis with a 3-litre engine, but since then, and there's been a few years since it was built, it's actually from 1927, this car. They've fitted a 4.5-litre engine. So William in car number 84, it's actually started by George Elborn, handing over to William.
And there's a complete contrast with the fuel tank put onto the rear of the car with no consideration of airflow across the rear of the Bentley. So, still on the drawing board phase. Here's Friedrichs coming up behind the number 84. I think he's probably going to be a lap ahead though, such as the pace of Rudy Friedrichs, who continues to make his progress after that pit stop. Now Friedrichs has pitted, as has the leader.
Yeah, the mayor's car has been in while we were watching other cars.
Right,
so
I see.
Yeah, that's they've both done their stop. most cars in the leading pack that we were watching early in the race have done their stops now, so it'll be interesting in a lap or so's time as things settle in. We'll see where they are relative to each other now.
And we saw the pace of Friedrichs. He was very, very conscious of making ground after he came bounding out of that pit stop, going across the grass at the Craner Curves, for instance. There he is through McLean's and heading towards Coppice now. We'll perhaps get a feel for where things are, Alistair, on this lap through. Whether the number 112 of the Mayors have maintained that lead. 69 into the pits, that's down the order somewhat.
And
in sixth.
Theo Hunt, you could see there T Hunt on his helmet. Theo taking over from Andrew Hall in the Fraser-Nash Supersports, another one of the Fraser-Nash. These cars driven by chains, not by...
Chain-driven.
Chain-driven, all Fraser-Nash, yeah. And equally, some of the cars in the lead group are chain-driven cars. Richard Pilkington there in the very distinctive French blue Talbot, the T26SS, and through goes Ben Mayers in the 112 GN with the Parker.
Now then, that means that Friedrichs has done what in current Formula 1 terms is the undercut during the pit stop, and he's gone ahead by 17 seconds.
It would have been harder for you to use a less appropriate word at that moment.
Absolutely, certainly for this era, and I do apologise. Please forgive me, everyone. I tried not to, but I just thought I'd get that across so we can throw that one in the bin. Friedrichs, we saw maintain that pace after his pit stop, and the 17-second lead that he had there across the line as the Mayors car, Ben Mayers now at the wheel of that number 112, comes through in second spot, and that's quite a drive there from Rudy Friedrichs. He was fully conscious and aware of what he needed to do. We've just clicked by 16 and a half minutes remaining, and we're still seeing people requiring to give us pit stops, but the amount of cars that are needing to do that, I think I can count on one hand, maybe one or two more cars to due in.
Richard Pilkington going out. He's done his stop. Yeah, he's carrying on. So he's done his stop, and we were looking there at Gregor Fiskin standing, just doing a little bit of exercise, just warming himself up before he takes over his car. The specialist classic car dealer, Gregor Fiskin, a very good driver as well, as we're looking at a group of cars coming down the long straight into the chicane. This is a lovely shot, the slowest part of the circuit, and we can see three abreast as they came in, and sliding up on the inside there was Patrick Blakeney Edwards, PBE. Look at the huge car there, very different, and there's some aerodynamics at a very early stage as they come through the chicane. Now PBE looks like he's made his way. He's looking across, chatting with the other driver as they turn into Redgate. Takes the wide line into the pit lane exit, which is perfectly okay. That's part of the track. Another car, a late stopper. I think this might be Gregor Fiskin's car. Is it coming in? He's ready there. You can see his helmet with the tartan band. Scotsman coming in, the number 16 car that was started by Christoph Cowens. And it's a Vauxhall, a Vauxhall 3090, known as the Hughes Special from 1924. Vauxhall were, in these days, very much a luxury car manufacturer, and later on became a real volume manufacturer as well, of course. Yeah, and
still exist.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Still exist.
That
30 seconds flies by when we're chatting. Gregor Fiskin takes that number 16 Vauxhall out, still bearing the number plate that it was first road registered, probably Alpha Oscar Alpha 2. Very few cars on the road back in 1924, I would imagine. And there's that number 7 you were number 2 you were talking about.
Yes, the Lagonda V12 engine, built for the Le Mans 24-hour race, 1939 car, a vast car. Lagonda were eventually taken over or joined up with Aston Martin.
And you can see, we talked about consideration for airflow, that we've got the curved mudguards on the car and the rear end of the car, the sleek cockpit area with bodywork continuing across the rear suspension, and then across the rear of the car into the pits with what looks like a problem. Look, there's the big Big heavy hammer there. That's not to do anything underneath that bonnet, but that's to take the wheels on and off. The copper hammer.
That's the number 6 car of Steve and Josh Ward. It's a Bentley 4.5, and they head out. That's quite late on in the pit window there. Now we're looking at Ben Mayers again. What a great shot that is. He's hunched over the wheel, quite a big steering wheel, and hunched over it, just trying to will that car on. The 6.2 litre aero engine in the front of that GN, and he makes his way past one of the Aston Martins as he goes down onto the long straight.
He's ever so slightly, Alistair, reduced the gap at the front of the field. It was just over 17 seconds, it's now just under 17 seconds, so it's very marginal, but he has put in, Ben Mayers, I believe, that is the owner of that fastest lap of the race, 132.5. I'm going to have to say the hundreds, the tenths and thousands as well. 132.513, slightly quicker best lap time than Rudy Friedrichs, who's on a 132.596. So nothing in it at the front. These two, it was all done, I think, with slick pit strategy. I think Rudy Friedrichs certainly didn't have that gap when we went through the pit stop phase, but after that he came out with some concern, some consternation. He knew what he had to do, and that's where I think he's going to consolidate that position at the front of this field.
That's wonderful to see. We've said it before, the drivers at work, but you get these lovely shots down through the Craner curves. All the drivers totally exposed really to the elements, and you can see their hands working away at the wheel as they try to coax the car to go through the corner a little bit faster.
That's a good word, actually, coax.
You do, don't
yes,
you?
Yes, you do, yeah. You're kind of urging it to.
A lot of the Bentleys will be weighing way north of a tonne, so they're quite a lot of work to stop them. And something I just briefly touched on earlier, we got an exciting move on the track that I just wanted to mention, that if you look at the greatest race, perhaps sports car race in the world, the Le Mans 24 Hours, we have 4 marks on track that have taken the outright win at Le Mans. On a number of occasions. We've got the Lagonda, which won in 1935. We've seen 2 examples of that out on track. The Largo Talbot, which is Richard Pilkington's driving, the T26. The Aston Martin, which took the win not to a car like this. We're now up to 1959, so it's more like the cars we'll see in the race at the end of the day. And of course Bentley, one of 6 times at Le Mans, 5 times in the 20s, in 1930. And then again in 2003. And there's the French blue car like that, similar to that, not that car, but a similar car to that, won the Le Mans 24 Hours in 1950.
Now consider that the Le Mans 24 Hours was first run in 1923 on the era of Le Mans that we still run the race on to this very day. But back in those days in 1923, in those early runnings of the event, they would have been on dirt roads and loose gravel road and dirt road, and it was very much a road race that we evolved and it used into today's iteration.
And it used to go all the way into Le Mans town,
Pontarlier, the hairpin, to Le Mans town.
The hairpin in the town and back out again, which is now not part of the circuit.
You can still visit that part.
You
though.
can.
That the house that the cars would go around is still there.
Yeah.
And a good friend Paul Tarsi used to run tours to Le Mans and would take you out there and explain and show. You can still see pictures and footage from that part of the track. Great to visit.
That's one of the places which we've visited on our tours around, and go find a place that was part of a circuit. It's one of those wonderful things you can do if you've got the pictures. Here comes the sideways Sue Derbyshire, who's taken over the 3-wheel Morgan now, and you can see Sue working away there. She really is very, very quick in this car. It's surprisingly very competitive in this race. She's actually lying in 4th place overall in this little 3-wheel car.
And she's driving that car like you ride a motorcycle. She's using all of her body weight, leaning out of the car and through the right-handers.
She's also wearing leathers as well.
She's wearing leathers, is she?
Yeah, she doesn't wear a fireproof suit because it's technically a motorcycle, so she wears a leathers, as does very often her co-driver, Ewan Cameron.
And the way she was holding the steering wheel there, she's got 2 hands pulling the car to the right. So maybe on skinny tyres, and you can see the absolute speed that she's getting up to on the long back straight towards the chicane.
Yep.
There she is, just pulling the wheel to the right and then immediately to the left through the chicane, leaning her body into the car, ducking down behind that small screen there just to maximise the airflow over her head.
And you can see that was a good shot there going through
Beautiful.
the chicane. You see it now. It's a twin cylinder car, two-cylinder car, V-twin, so it's got the engine is V-shaped, hung out at the front of the car. Absolutely amazing machine.
Air-cooled, of course.
Absolutely, yes.
So it's stuck right there on the front of the car, getting all the airflow to cool it down.
And it's mentioned earlier, the Morgan still, of course, made in Malvern, where this car would have been made all those years ago. It started out as the Santler Car Company, I think it was called, but the Morgan family very much involved right up until very recently. And that's a super shot there of Sue, isn't it? Just
Brilliant.
Leaning across, exactly as you said, using her body weight.
And also I've noticed she's very, very cleanly driving around the circuit here at Donington Park, using very little of the curbs, in complete contrast to some of the drivers out there who are using all of those curbs. Maybe the curbs unsettle the three-wheeler a little bit differently to a conventional four-wheel car, but if you watch, she's almost inch perfect, just up to the edge of the curves, using all of the outside line, completely missing that second apex at Coppice Corner, which is kind of the conventional line. Now there's a car smoking, Alistair. It's the number 17. That's Jack McKinnon in the Bentley 3 litre.
1924 will allow him a little bit of smoke, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And he's Jock McKinnon making his way down. I think we're still on him, aren't we, with the Bentley there? Coming down the hill. Now that smoke seems to have stopped, so perhaps just a momentary leak onto the exhaust or something, just a small amount. I'm not sure how long that car has been smoking, but sometimes not a good sign when the smoke stops, because that means we've run out of oil. There's no more oil to burn. Looks like he's following Duncan Wiltshire there
Seems
as
to be
well.
going well, though.
Yeah, very well. Duncan is running. Yes, it is Duncan ahead. So they're 19th and 20th. This is actually a position battle. That's quite. There's a bit of smoke again. Look, it's coming out of the side of the engine there onto the exhaust.
We'll keep an eye on this battle for the moment. We're just under 6 minutes remaining in what is this 40-minute, the Mad Jack for pre-war sports cars. We mentioned the relevance of the Mad Jack moniker. It's in honour of a chap that raced here very, very early on. There is a move for position as the number 17 goes ahead of the number 46. Battle of the Bentleys there.
And it's Duncan Wiltshire who's been passed in his Bentley, number 46, the 3 litre.
He's not going to settle though, is he?
No. He'll be loving this, Duncan, because of course he's the one of the driving forces behind this meeting, and there's nothing he likes more than to see a full track of racing cars, and if he's involved in it, even better. So,
yeah, he'll be enjoying that. Now I have a feeling that smoke is increasing, and it looks like it's coming out of from under the bonnet and sort of going across the driver as well. So I'm pretty sure that Jock McKinnon will be aware of that. It was just the angle there as we came into Redgate. It looked like the smoke was coming out from under the bonnet and coming across the front screen of the driver. Duncan Wiltshire has slotted in behind. It doesn't look like he can get back on terms with the 17, so a change for position. It's a battle for 17th and 18th. Both drivers enjoying their drive this afternoon.
Meantime, up front, we've got Justin Mayers and Ben Mayers leading Rudy Friedrichs by 8.9 seconds with 4 1/4 minutes remaining in the race. And then it's the Fred Wakeman, Patrick Blakeney Edwards number 11 car in 3rd place. But we're looking at Richard Pilkington in that lovely blue Talbot, or Talbot in its French form. And he's making his way up the hill through Schwantz Curve. Now he's being passed and lapped by our leader, which is Ben Mayers. So here we see the GN Parker again as he comes through. You get a good shot there of just how little of the car there actually is, apart from the important bits like the engine and gearbox and the wheels. I'll stop before I say brakes, because some of these cars only have very flimsy brakes on them as well, which is a frightening thought, as we've got a lovely battle going on here. Aston Martins and Bentleys. That smoky Bentley's still going, but it's slowing, isn't it? Because there's Duncan Wiltshire up ahead.
Yeah.
So I think perhaps now the number 17 Bentley, he's realised, Jock McInnes has realised that he's just got to pull in. And an Aston Martin pulling off at the top of the hill at the Hollywood section, and looking for that gap, isn't he? He's going to ask the marshals to pull him back into there. We've got 3 minutes left, Joe.
Yeah, 3 minutes of what has been a very, very interesting. Now the Aston Martin regains. I'm not sure what that was about. There's no Control-Alt-Delete on these cars, resetting the electric, so he certainly pulled off with a problem. That's the 75 of Steve Skipworth and James Dean. It's the Aston Martin Monoposto Speed model. Beautiful, beautiful car in red.
Never actually raced in period, because it was built in 1939 and then the war started.
Of course.
But Dick Skipworth, Steve's dad, has had it rebuilt, and it's absolutely as it was in period, but never actually took part in top class racing at the time.
Right, that figures. That's understandable. So unexplained reasons there. We'll potentially get to the bottom of them. We may never get to the bottom of them. The leader, though, the lead has changed. It's now gone to the number 112 of Ben Mayers, who's got ahead of Rudy Friedrichs, and he's ahead by about 6.4 seconds. Fastest lap time to Ben Mayers as well, 132.513. So just fractions of a second in the accolade for fastest lap of this event. But whilst we were gracing ourselves with the views of these pre-war cars, now the Aston driver, Steve Skipworth, is gesticulating to his people on the pit wall, pointing to something there.
And we've got a battle here, because Patrick Blakeney-Edwards, PBE, has caught Rudy Friedrichs. This is a battle for second, but it may well become a battle for the lead. We've only got a minute left, but Friedrichs and Blakeney-Edwards are quicker than our leader Ben Mayers, so we could end up with a 3-car battle for the lead on this very last lap.
This is the last lap, Alistair. Yeah, it's going to be the last lap. Yeah.
They've got 45 seconds and they're down at the old hairpin, and they're not quite going to make it back to the start, are they? So it is there's the leader. There is second and third, and they are going quicker than the leader. And PBE, is he going to go through at McLean's? No room there, but he's going to try and do the cutback now and come up alongside Rudy Friedrichs as they run up to the top of the hill. There's our leader cresting the rise. That's a great shot, isn't it?
It is beautiful.
Up there.
There's an even better one as the battle for second came over the brow there. Absolutely nose to tail. It's PBE on the tail of Rudy Friedrichs as they come out onto the back straight. Already into the chicane, though, is our leader Ben Mayers in the 112, out of our sight. He regained the lead for that number 112, Parker, GN Parker. And there's the battle for second into the chicane now, and it looks like Friedrichs has held onto it as the checkered flag flies, and a great win for the Mayers. Rudy Friedrichs will hang on to second, and then the Wakeman and Blakeney-Edwards, Fraser Nash, car number 11, in third spot as the rest of the field file in. There's the that great finish for the Morgan Super Aero that was brought home, the number 35 in fourth place, and that was great drive from Ewan Cameron and Sue Derbyshire there. Sue finishing the race for that car. Fifth spot was number 5. That's Richard Pilkington in the Talbot T26SS to give it its full title. We'll have a rundown as the cars come through to finish, and for me, that was these cars may be pre-war. These cars may be, getting towards, if not already, 100 years old, but they're not just paraded, are they? They're not just demonstrated. The drivers out there in these machines are absolutely racing them.
And I think it's worth mentioning that we've said there some of them are 100 years old. Many of them approaching. That was a 40-minute race, which is a long time for cars of this age, and we had very, very few retirements. I think probably about 4 or 5 retirements. The rest of the cars made it to the finish. That really is amazing, isn't it, for these cars?
And talking of retirements, I'm being told this is potentially Duncan Wilshire's first race finish for a couple of years. He's had some terrible luck in that Bentley.
That could be right, yes.
It may be right. I'm being told it's the first finish in 2 years.
Oh, well done, Duncan.
So he'll be very, very happy with that.
15th place for the number 46 Bentley of Duncan Wiltshire, as we look at Rudy Friedrichs, who was in second place, the car number 8, and just behind him the number 11 car, started by owner Fred Wakeman, finished by PBE Patrick Blakeney-Edwards, the car's preparer. And also we should have already had into the pit lane perhaps the GN, who was the winner of the race, that of Justin and Ben Mares.
So Ben proved to be the faster driver of that pairing then. Ben eventually taking fastest lap of the race. No, right at the very end.
Yeah, Patrick.
Pat Blakeney-Edwards just snatching it there, with the only car being into the 131s, 131.765. So that was we saw Pat Blakeney-Edwards chasing down Rudy Friedrichs, and right there on the very last lap of this race, he snatches the fastest lap of the race accolade from Ben Mares, as the cars then make their way towards our scrutineering and Parc Fermé. Andrew Marriott will be down there to get a chat to our winning drivers. We'll just wait for word from Andrew, and we'll head down there. Let's have a rundown of the result if we've got them, though. We'll just wait for that to come through. So we're just waiting for those to be confirmed. But for me, the most animated driver award goes to Rudy Friedrichs.
Yes.
It was a great drive.
Yeah.
Loved watching him. I could watch him all day.
I wonder when he's driving on the road whether he turns the wheel as much.
I would like to think so. I hope he's got power steering and a rack and pinion steering on that car. These cars, of course, the old style steering boxes, which was, left to right just to get a bit of feel in the steering. I think we're ready to have a look at our results now, Alistair.
So results up on the screen. A win for Justin and Ben Mares, car number 112, and in the GN Parker. In second place, Rudy Friedrichs, number 11 in the Alvis Firefly. Number 8 in the Alvis Firefly. In third place, number 11, Fred Wakeman and Patrick Blakeney-Edwards in the Fraser Nash. And in fourth place, the wonderfully driven Morgan three-wheeler of Ewan Cameron and Sue Derbyshire. That was number 35. Then it was the number 5, Richard Pilkington, Talbot T26 in fifth place. In sixth place, Ewan Getley and Robin Talui in the Bentley 3 4.5. And in seventh place, Alan Middleton, the Aston Martin Speed Red Dragon. That's the D there, it's the name of the car, Red Dragon. And the Hudson and Morley car in 8th place, the Bentley 3 4.5. Then the other parts of the Morley family, they're great Bentley racers, in 9th place, the Morleys in the other Bentley 3 4.5. And then completing the top 10, it's Robert Blakemore in the Aston Martin Speed model. In 11th place, we've got Cowans and Fiskin in the Vauxhall 3098. We had a good shot there of Gregor Fiskin in the pits getting into that Vauxhall. And in 12th place, the Ball family car, the Invicta S-Type. And 13th place, Richard Lake in another of the Aston Martin Speed models. In 14th place, the Bradleys in their Aston Martin Ulster. I think we've seen Richard win a race already today, haven't we? And then in 15th place, our very own Duncan Wiltshire. Well done to Duncan. If that was your first race finish in 2 years, well done, in the Bentley 3 litre. In 16th place, Steve Skipworth and James Dean in the Aston Martin Monoposto. We saw that car pull off at the top of the hill but then get going again. Then it was the Waterfield and Williams Fraser Nash, which was on the front row, was in the lead group but dropped back during the race. Then it's the Elborns in the Bentley 3 4.5 in 18th. In 19th place, Jock McKinnon in the very smoky Bentley 3 litre. And in 20th place, Paul Poshiol in his Bentley Tourer. Completing the finishing the cars that started and most finished the race. The Wards in their Bentley 4.5 litre 21st. In 22nd, the similar car of Guy Northam. In 23rd, it's the Hall and Hunt Fraser Nash Super Sports. Richard Iliff in 24th place in his Riley Kestrel Sports. And then the vast V12 Lagonda of Mark Butterworth that we had on shot in the race in 25th place. But some of these cars we know didn't finish because Gareth Burnett retired to the pits early on, 26th on the classification. Talbot AV 105, Nigel Dowding, Riley Brooklands, and Simon Edwards in the Morgan Super Aero retired very early on in the race.
Great to see these cars out here at the Donington Historic Festival, and certainly from where Alistair and I were sitting, it was a fantastic race. Let's head down and see what sort of race it was from the driving seat.
So, a father and son victory down here. Let's get hold of Ben first. Ben, I think this time you were quicker than Dad a bit, were you?
Yes, it's the first time. I don't think I'll be in the car much longer.
So just tell me about the win there. The car was going very well. I mean, you beat the Blakeney car, which has won this 6 times, I think. That's a great result for you.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, especially we've had to rebuild the car since the crankcase cracked at Castle Combe and had to rebuild it just in time for Silverstone the other week.
Well, let's try and get Dad over. Where's Dad gone there? He's Justin.
Yes.
Excellent result here. Tell us a little history of this wonderful car here.
So this wonderful car here came out of the GN factory in 1921 with a little 1100cc V-twin engine. Competed for the first time at Shelsley Walsh in 1922, and they thought it was so weedy that they put a V-twin JAP engine out of a Bruff Superior in it. Then later they put a Meadows engine in it, but finally the solution arrived of a 6.2 litre Cirrus Hermes mighty aircraft engine, which just powers it around the track just beautifully, as well as it does on the road.
Well, excellent. A good win for you with your son. A great day to remember.
A great day to remember. It's the first time that he's driven this car faster than me, so I'm so proud for him. A day of change. So fantastic.
Right, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
There's trophies there on the car for you. Let's move over.
Thank you very much.
And here, Fredericks here. That was a good old battle, wasn't it?
That was a good battle. One of the
Fred Wakeman we're talking to here.
one of the most exciting things on this circuit is driving a Fraser Nash down the Craner curves. You're just hanging on for dear life, basically.
Yeah. Now, you and Pat, I think, have won this Mad Jack race. It's 5 or 6 times. What happened today?
Well, I don't know. I mean, all the cars are getting quicker. It's difficult to compete with the 6 litres of the Cirrus Gem, but that's driven really well. And Rudy, he was on it. It was very difficult to find a slot. I could get alongside him from time to time, but that's only 1.5 litres. I think Rudy's sort of 4.5. I don't. But he drives it very well. And as Freddie says, it's proper seat of the pants stuff in a pre-war car around here.
And boys, it made a great spectacle. Let's go and find if Rudy. Is Rudy still here? Yeah, Rudy. Rudy's off to see a mate here. Let's see if I can grab him. Rudy, can I just grab you?
Sorry.
Well,
yes.
you had a great race there, didn't you? And good battle, you and the Alvis, of course.
Yeah, well, I'm enjoying this car. This morning we had a real trouble. We changed the rear tyres, and I told them 2 bar. And then we checked after qualifying, it was 50 PSI. That's why I couldn't make it. And it was a great battle, especially with the GN Parker. I'm very happy father and son team made it.
Nice, wasn't it? Yeah,
very nice. And it's always a challenge to race against Patrick Blakeney Edwards. In the end, he's always catching up because I'm making pace to Fred Wakeman. Yeah. And the moment Patrick pops in, I need all my hands and feet to manage to keep him at bay. Well, it was great.
Last question, what attracted you to the brand Alvis? Some people think of them more of making fire engines and things.
Well, actually, some 25 odd years ago, I bought my first Speed 20 Elvis from Rod Jolly.
Right.
And I did lots of long distance rallies, like Peking to Paris, crossing Africa, Australia, Road to Mandalay, things like that. And then we bought this Firefly chassis. It's a special. Well, we are Elvis people, yeah, we love Elvis. It's a 4.3 engine, it's powerful, it's got a lot of torque, and it's a lot of fun to drive, and they are very reliable.
Great, well, it was a super race showcasing these pre-war sports cars. So from me, I think we're about to head off for a bit of lunch, but back to you in the commentary box.